All right, everybody, coming to you live here. It's a Green with Envy post game live. Celtics get the 114-98 home win, backdoor into the 40-20 club on the season. A big night from Neemias Queta, presented by Whoop. I can't wait to get into it. This is another Green with Envy post game live. You guys know the deal. Let's lock in. What up, what up, what up? Welcome into another edition of Green with Envy. It is a Green with Envy post-game live coming to you fresh off a Celtics 114-98 win over the Philadelphia 76ers, splitting the season series 2-2 in what could be a potential future playoff matchup. As always, this is your boy Will Weir checking in. How you doing? How you living? Joining me as he does each and every time, my best friend, co-host, and the coach of our podcast, the one and only Greg Manakis. Greg, Celtics getting a lot of love here on Sunday Night Basketball. They had the Lakers last week, Sixers this week, got the Cavs next week. So a lot of exposure for the Celtics here. And tonight we got left with, I don't know if you heard Reggie Miller mention this during one of his 5-minute monologues about Whoop, or just like the other 17 times he mentioned, this is the Neemias Queta game. On that part, he's undoubtedly correct.
Neemias Queta was unbelievable in this game tonight. He finishes 10 for 14 from the field, 7 for 10 from the line, 10 offensive rebounds, 17 total rebounds, 4 stocks, and 27 points, a career high. He didn't get to that 30 point that you asked our boy Mark
close
to check. I don't know why you went 30. Like, he could have went 25.
Yeah.
His career high was like 19 before that.
I didn't put a ton of thought into it. I just wanted to join the bandwagon because he seemed into it, and I was like, "Fuck it, I'll throw 5 on it with you." But like as was going, I was like, "We probably should just done 25 because 25 is pretty outside of Neemias Queta's range as is." And but I will say, when he made that little run at the end, I was like, "Oh my god, he's making a run at it." I think we would have needed that last Baylor 3 that went in. You would have needed like a put back dunk and catch a and one on the lower body.
I was actually trying to think how you would get to 30. I was like, is there a world in which they just leave Queta open and like a delay action at the top of the screen and he bombs a 3? That would have been storybook. But yeah, Queta, this is, I texted Alex during the game and I was like, we're starting this podcast talking about Neemias Queta. And that was in the first half when he was initially doing his thing. And when you see him juxtaposed against Andre Drummond, who's, veteran big, who is known for being one of the best rebounders of all time, and Queta is just kind of giving him the business on the boards, and he's giving everybody on Philadelphia, it just fits around the rim with his presence, his size, his timing. He had that one possession at the very end of the game to seal it where he blocks Maxey and then comes out and covers Edgecombe on the same possession. And when you see that level of defense, when he can play up to the level at the 3-point line, and then you think about the way Vooch was just getting cooked in the deep drop, like in the third quarter and early in the fourth quarter, like this is why when we made the trade, I'm going to repeat it again for those of you that are unaccustomed to Green with Envy, when we made the trade for Nikola Vucevic, that was a bet on Neemias Queta being your future center, your current center, and long-term piece holding down the front court for the Boston Celtics, because you could have easily put in a lot more chips and gone and get Ivica Zubac, right? You could have done that. You could have put together an offer, and instead you say, we don't need Zubac. We got Big Neemy. The Portuguese beast is here, and he's here to stay.
I'm so glad you brought up that defensive possession that he had against Maxey and Edgecombe on the left side of the 3-point line on that, towards the end of the game. That's not the number one highlight, but that's probably the number one sequence of this game, because I think that was when Philly was really kind of building that momentum. And listen, Edgecombe and Maxey are a scary combo. Like when you think about their long-term future, like that's a fucking backcourt. And you throw Grimes in there too, I think. And we'll talk about them because I think Peyton Pritchard did not enjoy his night tonight, and I think they had a big reason to do it. We'll talk about that later. But sticking with Neemy on that, like those are the exact type of guys, especially from what we had seen of Neemy going into this season, right? It's like, oh, these guys are going to put him on skates. And listen, sometimes Neemy does look like a deer that just came out the womb there with some of his limbs flying around. Those are the type of guys that you're like, this is going to be a rough matchup. And for him to have that defensive stance against those two, and really his defense all night, like and all season, like the progress that we've seen on the defensive end, you can look at any numbers with him in the lineup. The Celtics, who are now a 7th ranked defense on the season overall, like Neemy's a massive part of this because all season, whatever lineup you've put out there with him, they've been a top 5 level defense. Everything around him is starting to kind of actually catch up to what he's been doing all year. But I think, him tonight with, you mentioned the four stocks, three official blocks, but so many other altered shots, and his knowledge on both ends of just where to be spatially, like it makes me think back to the development that we saw with Luke Cornett over the last couple of years, and how Luke, certainly never had the athleticism that Neemy has, but now you're kind of seeing the knowledge that Luke had, but now with Neemy athleticism. And
right. It's like if you took Luke Cornett and Robert Williams and you melded them into one player, you end up with Neemias Queta. Right?
They had a beautiful biracial Portuguese baby. It's Neemias Queta.
That's kind of what we're seeing. And, it's funny. At one point, the broadcast called out. They're like, are we seeing KG out here tonight? And like, there have been times this year where I've texted in the group. I'm like, dude, Neemy kind of reminds me a little bit of KG. Like, his impact on the defensive end is just unbelievable. He doesn't have the defensive IQ, and he's not the backline defender and communicator that Kevin Garnett was, that made him so goddamn special. But you see these moments out of Queta where you understand why the Celtics were just like, I think we might be able to get by with Neemias Queta as our starting center. And then at the trade deadline, they're like, I think we're going to be okay with Neemias Queta holding this down for the foreseeable future.
Dude, I've said it for a month now. That's got to be Brad's one of his top 2 things that he's got to do this offseason is go secure Neemy because the price is going to keep going up. And obviously playoffs will dictate a lot of what that price ends up being. But going and getting Neemy on some type of hopefully $10-12 million deal, like you got to go do it now because you can see what the potential is. And if you play this out, he may not be here the year after next, right? Like you're gonna be left in a tough position. So I think that's got to be at the top of Brad Stevens' to-do list in the offseason is go secure Neemias Queta, which I going into the season, I was pretty, I feel like there has been some Queta support throughout the years, right? Just because I think he reminded us so much of Rob Williams and everything Rob Williams meant when healthy. And I always thought it was a little overblown. Like I could see it, but I always thought it was a little overblown because Neemy just used to make so many mistakes, right? And I still remember this, Greg, the preseason game against the Raptors, when in the first 5 minutes, I think Neemy had 4 fouls and like 2 of them were moving screens. Like they were just all the stuff. And I was like, Jesus, this is how we're starting the season. Yeah, this is gap year 101 type of stuff. And now where we're at, 40 wins, 20 losses, 60 games in. And I couldn't have seen this coming in a million years that this would have gone this well for Neemias Queta, but it's awesome to watch.
Yeah, and let's just call this out. He wasn't playing against Joel Embiid tonight, right? Joel Embiid was out in this game, so he was going up against Drummond and Bona. But still, to put up the numbers that he put up, 27 and 17, like he was the MVP on the court tonight. Jaylen Brown was pretty close, but Neemias Queta was just a beast on the boards because how many minutes did he even play in this game? I feel like he sat out a good amount.
He played
27 minutes.
Just over 27, yeah.
Yeah, 27 minutes out of him tonight, but really special stuff out of Queta.
Well, the thing is, Greg, the reason why it's so celebrated is that this isn't an isolated night, right? Like I think at one point in the year when we were like, what does a successful season, if this team, and I don't think we ever dreamed the Celtics would be a 2 seed in this position without Jason Tatum, where we're like realistically considering a finals run. We never thought this was possible. Like not at all. But we were like, okay, if this team's going to crack a 6 seed, a 5 seed, even sniff like a 4 seed, we were like, Neemias Queta he's got to get consistently to like 10 points, 8 rebounds. And he's like, even though that is roughly what his averages are, like 10 points, 9 rebounds, whatever it is, like he's so far exceeded that because we knew that like an outlier night could exist out of him because we saw the potential. But the reason that it's so celebrated right now is that the consistency is there, and now it's consistent spike, consistent spike. Like there's no drop down to games where I'm coming on here with you after a game expecting to look at, yeah, man, Neemy was 4 rebounds and 2 points, 1 of 5, and didn't really contribute defensively. That's not a game. That's not a Neemias Queta option in my mind going into any game right now, and that's what is kind of mind blowing.
He's been very consistent this year. Let's go to the other MVP of the game, Jaylen Brown, who played 38 minutes tonight, 9 for 17 from the field, 7 for 7 from the line. He finishes with 8 rebounds, 8 assists, and a grand total of 27 points. So him and Queta tie for the game high. Neemias Queta, that's got to be a first for Queta, right? Being the game leading scorer.
Yeah.
That's great. So Jaylen Brown, 27, 8, and 8. Another game where he's just filling up the stat sheet. And it was a nice reminder that Jaylen Brown has been playing at an MVP level, because there have been some games of late where I'm like, yeah, the numbers are still there, but Jaylen Brown didn't quite have the impact that he had earlier in the season. I didn't feel like I felt his presence as much as I felt that he felt really in control of this game. And especially in a game where Peyton Pritchard was non-existent, we needed Jaylen Brown to run the show. And Jaylen Brown did run the show very well. 27 points, 8 assists, 8 rebounds.
Yeah, I think the 8 assists is what stands out to me, man. We've talked a lot this year about the patience, right? Of him drawing to finding the right read, and even at times doing the same thing that we praise Jason Tatum for growing into, is above and beyond the right pass, like almost the next pass, like skipping over the hockey assist and just getting the assist. Like the pass from him to Ugo in that first half, that was great.
Ooh, that was nice.
Probably I would have leaned a little bit more on like Ugo was more impressive with the finish than the Jaylen Brown pass. Both were very nice, but Jaylen Brown with the 8 assists, since the All-Star break, Greg, you take out that Denver game, which just the legs were dead. After that first half, or after the first quarter and a half, Celtics just didn't have a chance. They just weren't going to have it. Here's the assist numbers for Jaylen Brown. Golden State, he had 13 assists in that triple-double, 7 assists against the Lakers, 7 assists against Brooklyn in the blowout, 9 assists against Brooklyn in the blowout, and then another 8 assists here tonight. Like, this is the continued MVP evolution of Jaylen Brown. Kind of like we just talked about Neemy's consistency. We talk about Jaylen Brown's not it's a growing part of his game, but certainly not the strongest is his playmaking. And if you listen to a lot of the, national podcasts that are starting to have these MVP conversations, it's like the one area he gets dinged because he's going up against Cade. He's going up against SGA, going up against certainly Jokic, right? Or even Anthony Edwards at times. They're like, yeah, it's slightly better for some of these other guys. And, Jaylen's kind of putting him on notice a little bit here. Like, listen, I ain't as far behind this as you guys, as some of you might think that I am. And it depends which one you listen to. But Jaylen's making a hell of a case with more of these all-around games, which is really when we were praising Tatum to be in that MVP conversation. That was the level Tatum got to, where you were like, yeah, I just expect 28, 10, and 6 or 7. And that's just the line every night. And that's kind of what Jaylen's been doing here since the All-Star break, save for that Denver game when just nobody had it.
Yeah, he only took 17 shots tonight. I believe in the last game, maybe he only took 12 shots. I feel like he was like 9 for 12 from the field or something like that. And those are the games that we need to see more frequently out of Jaylen Brown. We can't have these games where he's shooting 28 field goal attempts like Maxey did tonight. Maxey shot a shit ton of shots tonight. And it's just too much to put on one guy's shoulders. And it's not a sustainable way to get you to a deep playoff run if you have one guy who's taking all those shots. And in a game where Peyton Pritchard didn't have it tonight and he only took 4 shots in this entire game, that's a game you would expect to look at Jaylen's stat line and be like, oh, he probably took 30 shots. And he didn't. He played within himself. He continued to move the ball. I feel like he probably had like 15 potential assists in this game as well. I've just been really impressed with his play, but it is interesting you brought up the playmaking aspect of it in terms of the MVP conversation, because it's almost like he's listening, which he probably is, to all the scuttlebutt around him.
I was listening to the Zach Lowe show at one, because Zach Lowe has been like, and Zach Lowe makes a good point. He's like, everyone thinks I'm just dogging Jaylen Brown because I'm putting him behind some of these guys. He's like, it's so close, but I just don't think he's there. But I've listened to him on Simmons. I've listened to his show. It's happened a couple of times, and it does sound like it. And like in my head, I was at the gym the other day. I was like, I know Jaylen's probably listening to this. I wonder if Jaylen, because I think, what does Zach Lowe do? Work with, I think, Amazon maybe. Like, I wonder if he was on like an after game show, if Jaylen Brown would just call it out, because Jaylen Brown loves calling out the media on different things. I was like, in my head, I could picture him being like, "Yo, Zach, 9 assists. What you think? Am I still fifth? Am I still fourth? Like what? And I could picture that happening
for sure. Yeah, and I just think like it's almost as if he's listening and he said, "Okay, I'm averaging 29 points, career high, but that's not enough, I guess. We're, 40 and 20 this year, but I guess that's not enough. I'm guarding the best player on the other team in the biggest games in the biggest moments, but I guess that's not enough. I guess I'll just try and go for the LeBron stat line, the 27, 7 and 7. And you guys praise LeBron for that for all these years. When are you going to start praising me for doing all the great shit that other guys are doing? And just, when you go back to the MVP conversation, go back to the Luka Doncic conversation, like I take Jaylen Brown over Luka Doncic 10 times out of 10 at this point. Like Luka Doncic does not impact the game on the level that Jaylen Brown does, man. He's a great offensive player, but he's just nowhere near the level of player and competitor that Jaylen Brown is.
Yeah, guest of the show, Jason Timpf had a good clip that I saw going around about him talking about Luka, where he was like, he might have, arguably one of the 2 highest highs of anybody in the league for like when he's on. But the issue with Luka is if he's not hitting that high of high, or if he's not on with his offense, like it's the lowest of lows of anybody that's in this top tier conversation because there's no alternative. There's nothing else. He's not going to be a defensive guy. Like he's big, but he's not going to be.
And people always talk about people talk about how he's a good rebounder. He's not a good rebounder. Like he gets rebounds, but I wouldn't call him a good rebounder. Like in a big moment, if you're going to ask me who's going to get this rebound, Jaylen Brown or Luka Doncic, I would pick Jaylen Brown 10 out of 10.
Yeah, it's really interesting because like I don't think before this season there was ever a second that I would have thought about Jaylen Brown as better than Luka Doncic, or that I would choose him over Luka Doncic. And this year, it just I can't understand the people who are making arguments. If you've watched the Lakers, where you're like, yeah, Luka's having more of an impact on that team in a positive way than what Jaylen Brown is doing with the Celtics. It's just really interesting to think about. And I do think something else, Greg, I've thought about recently is I think in general, when we talk about who the best players are in the league, we probably do it the wrong way. Like, I think we need to actually look at it from more of a team building point of view. Like, let's line up the best 8-9 guys, like rank them as to how you can build. Like, you need one of these guys to win championship, but how you can build a team around them. And like Wemby's probably one, and then everyone after that is probably all the two-way guys. It's Jaylen Brown, it's Jason Tatum, it's Anthony Edwards, it's Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. Like, it's probably those guys, even more. I mean, Jokic kind of transcends it to a certain degree, but like all of those guys that play two ways, like those are the easiest guys to actually build a championship team around. So that's why for me, I'm with you now, where I'm just like, the more and more, even though Luka's gotten to a finals, Luka's been successful. Like, it's so hard to build a consistent team around what he does night to night. And you see with Jaylen Brown, there's games where, especially with this roster, he's going to take 28 shots because he kind of has to. And then, but then there's nights where he can pull it back and you get 9 for 17. You get great defense. You get 8 rebounds. You get 8 assists. You get all these other things that a guy like Luka just doesn't bring. And watching Jaylen's evolution to add instead of just remain like Luka has, like that's another part that I think pushes him up a notch in MVP and like tiers of the league, if you will.
Definitely. Yeah, Jaylen's been great. Anything else you want to hit on in this game?
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned Peyton Pritchard. I think we got to talk about it just for a little bit because it was pretty glaring watching Pritchard get locked down. It was a very weird night for Peyton Pritchard, and not just to get locked down, but to have 4 shots, right? Like you felt the tentativeness coming out of Peyton Pritchard, and it did make me think a little bit. Like there was 2 different thoughts I had, Greg, where one was like, I really enjoyed Neemy, and even though like Vucevic was getting beat on that drop, which we knew is going to happen, like he had 9 defensive rebounds in this game. Like that was actually a big part of this game. I thought it was just like a professional front court night between him and Queta. Like it was a pretty professional front court with, of course, Vuce. He played 20 minutes. We knew that Vuce is going to be a 20-minute guy, and like you said, it's a bet on Queta being able to play 25 to 30, and then Vuce is just coming in for the rest. But he knocked down the shots he needed to, gave you the defensive rebounds that you weren't really getting from Luka Garza, even though he was giving you energy and offensive rebounds. He was terrible on the like at least Vuce gives you that. So you got this real professional, night from the front court. But the other side of it was if you didn't get the surprise 27 from Neemy, you were really feeling Anthony Simons not there because Pritchard was giving you nothing. You kind of needed one more guy to give you some juice. If especially if the Sixers had Paul George and Embiid, this could be a very different game. And so it was interesting to see Pritchard be so tentative, Pritchard to get kind of locked up. And I think some of that is just a credit to Grimes and Edgecombe. Clearly made it their mission to not let Pritchard get going. But even when he had little glimpses, I don't know. It's just very weird to see Pritchard tentative because we just don't see that anymore from him.
Yeah, tentative, not playing with confidence. I texted Phil with about 6 minutes left. I was like, Joe needs to get Pritchard off the court, man. He has no confidence tonight. And ended up pulling him 2 minutes later to get Hauser back in the game. So you ended up with Peyton Pritchard finishing the game on the bench, and the Celtics finished the game with their starting five, which has been rare this year when Peyton Pritchard's been coming off the bench. But since that Lakers game, Peyton Pritchard has had 3 games where he didn't play well. So the Phoenix Suns had a lot of very athletic wings that they were throwing on him. Peyton Pritchard goes 2 for 13, 0 for 5 from 3 for 8 total points against the Nuggets, another team that was just like crazy energy, athletic, just up in his jersey. He goes 1 for 6, 3 points in that game. Bounces back against the Nets like everybody did, right? He had 22 against the Nets and 9 for 12, but then he goes 0 for 4 tonight. So that's 3 out of the last 4 games where Peyton Pritchard has not played well, and teams seem to be like really locking into the scouting report and not allowing Peyton Pritchard to bully them on those baseline drives and not allow him to get to his spots in the middle and play off of 2 with that little fadeaway jump shot that he's been loving this year, and not allowing him to get open threes. Like tonight, the 4 shots that he took were all 3-pointers and they were all bombs, right? And I think the Celtics need
they were
to
kind
do a
of
better
desperate
job
to get going too, right? They weren't good shots. They were desperation that if I hit this, maybe this will give me some juice.
But then he wasn't shooting the ones that were there, right? There was that one play where the Celtics, we got a steal, and then it was like a 3-on-1 fast break, and Pritchard was bringing the ball up in the left wing.
Believe it didn't pull.
Yeah, and it was like he pulled that in the finals against the Warriors, like when he didn't deserve to shoot
right?
That, right? Like he ends up passing it to Shireman, and then that play gets stuffed. I think there was like a challenge on that, and then we end up
Maxey got underneath the basket with Vooch and like pulled him down to the ground to kind of end the.
Okay, and then I don't think we scored on that possession though, and that was like a big moment where I felt like if Pritchard's feeling it, he's going to shoot that. And even when he's not feeling it, he's going to shoot that. It was a very weird and kind of alarming performance out of Pritchard tonight.
It really was, man. And there was several. I mean, there's one where we ended up getting a Jordan Walsh 3 out of it that kind of rolled around and went in, but it was like Pritchard had the shot. Pritchard had the lane, and he passed both of them and kicked it back to Jordan Walsh. And I'm like, listen, man, you're Peyton Pritchard. Like, you're the second leading scorer on this team. You had both of those shots. Like, I'm glad Jordan Walsh took it, because if Jordan Walsh is going to play, he's got to take that. And I'm glad it went in. But like, if we're ranking just like in the moment, what are the top 3 options here? Like, you went with option 3. There was option 1 and 2, and that's not the Peyton Pritchard that we need. So, I'm not alarmed, certainly yet, given the season. And I think the last podcast we had, we were on here raving about Peyton Pritchard killing the Lakers. You know what I mean? Or 2 podcasts ago, whatever it was. So it's certainly not a lot, like alarm bells going off. But because this could be a potential playoff matchup, like, it's definitely something you think about, because then you add in, say Paul George is back. Like, that's another guy that, like, you could, between Paul George, Kelly Oubre, Grimes, like Edgecombe, like, that's a lot of guys to throw at him. And if there's no Jason Tatum, like, of course, Jason Tatum coming back changes a lot of the dynamics of who can cover what and what you're paying attention to. But if you're thinking about this from the Celtics making whatever a run looks like with sans Jason Tatum, like, that's an alarming performance from Pritchard, because you can't have that. Like, you can't bank on getting 27 from Neemy. Like, that really bailed this team out tonight. And also, probably a guy that we didn't mention yet is Baylor Shireman. Like, his performance as well, with some hustle plays, knocking down some timely threes despite going 2 of 9, but he had to put those up because you weren't getting anything from Pritchard. And so, it's a lot to put on your reserves, which you can do for a game in a 7-game series and get away with it. But if that became a trend, like, that's super alarming, and that could be a downfall in the playoffs based on, what other teams are doing and what other teams are seeing against Pritchard.
Yeah, let's go to Baylor Shireman, man, because he continues to be my favorite player on the Celtics. And if we're doing the power rankings right now,
I like his thumbs up with his fractured thumb. I was a big fan of that
yeah,
celebration.
it's
It's
good
great.
stuff. It's good stuff. But he continues to be my favorite of the young wings right now.
Yeah, it's
If we're
gotta be
doing
number
that
one right
power,
now.
the power rankings, it's got to go Baylor, Ugo, Walsh, right? That's
Yeah.
what it is right now at this point in the season. That's probably what it's going to be. But if you look back all the way until, let's see, the Celtics last, what's that? Maybe like 12 games or so. He's only played under 20 minutes one time. That was the game against the Heat where he played 19 minutes. Starting with the game against the Mavs, he played 28 minutes, and since that game against the Mavs, the only game he's played under 20 minutes was against the Heat. So Joe Mazzulla clearly trusts him. He has trusted him all year, dating back to those challenge calls that we saw early in the year where Baylor called for a challenge and Joe immediately, without hesitation, challenged it. And we were like, damn, like Joe really trusts Baylor. And he's just continued to prove that he has Joe's trust and he has the entire team's trust. So when you think about Jason Tatum's impending return, we're hopeful it could be happening this week. Baylor Shireman I think he's going to stick in the starting lineup. We talked about it before, but I do think it's going to be Sam Hauser that ends up on the bench because Baylor has just become too important of a defender and a rebounder for this team. And his ability to hit the three,
the recovery plays. He made multiple recovery plays tonight.
Bro, he's Marcus Smart. He's white Marcus Smart with a J.
I did. You texted that earlier today. It was making me think we got to. Well, maybe you should be the person to come up with it. We got to come up with like Post Malone had White Iverson. We got to get like a white Marcus or a white. I don't know. So we got to make it sound better than that. But we need that that same anthem for it because I don't know how wrong you are in that. Like it feels like the play to break up the alley oop. And then when he created the turnover and then he went back and made up for it against
that was like the
Maxey.
ultimate Marcus experience, right? He's the one that turns it over, but then sprints back and knocks the ball out of bounds. Perfect example.
And you add in the unconsciousness from shooting the ball, like just completely forgets that he just bricked like horribly a couple shots tonight, hit the big buzzer beater at the end of the first half. Had those two shots back to back where it's like, dude, on the second one, you could have taken a step in. Like you had time to like reset yourself. You were just like, nah, I got it again, man. I'm letting it fly. It's very white Marcus Smart. There's a lot there. And and we mean this in a positive way. Like this is a very positive version of Baylor Shireman that we're getting. Again, I think you're right about the starting lineup. Like it just makes it makes sense that if Tatum comes back, keep Shireman, move Hauser back, you Baylor lefty Marcus. Yeah, I got that in the chat here. I think it makes a lot of sense, man. I think that's the right move. I really do. And I guess that kind of brings us to Tatum, right? Because this was the game. Everyone freaked out about a week or two ago. Oh my God, NBC picked it up. NBC's doing this and that. And I thought it was a little bit overblown, but we're in the window. The documentary is off and running. We're up to part two. I think part three is dropping right now as we're doing this. Have you watched any of the first two parts yet?
I watched the first part, which let's look at the Celtics schedule. Let's just do this again. The Tatum watch.
Yeah, well, so just for the upcoming week, I've got the upcoming week in front of me right here.
Okay.
So Celtics play tomorrow night against the Bucks. So by the way, have won 7 out of their last 10 without Giannis. Still in 11th place, so not really too much to worry about.
They got smoked by the Bulls tonight, though.
Okay, yeah, exactly. I said not much to worry about there. After that, pretty fun week for the Celtics, actually. So they got the Hornets on Wednesday. I'm actually pretty pumped for that game. Hornets Wednesday night. We're gonna go live after that game. I think that'll be fun. Got Khan, LaMelo, Brandon Miller, and crew. They've been wrecking through people over the last 20, 25 games. Then on Friday, Mavs. We got Cooper Flagg's debut in Boston. That's an interesting,
Is he gonna play though? Isn't he out?
Jason Tatum. Is Cooper Flag out? Oh, I might have missed that.
Yeah, I think there was a note that they might shut him down for the year.
Oh God, that would suck. That would suck. We don't even get one Flag game in Boston. Well, maybe that game will become a lot less fun. We'll see. And then next Sunday in Cleveland, we get another potential playoff matchup against the Cavs. So that's the week ahead that we have coming up here. But if we're just looking at the overall schedule, there's still obviously some opportunities. So after that Cleveland game, it's San Antonio, which your boys will be at. So if you're listening, if you're in the Texas area, you're going to be at that game. shoot us a DM, shoot us a message, celticsnoise@gmail.com. Hit us an email. We'd love to get together and hang out during that game before, maybe even try to organize something. Day off, and then they play OKC on Thursday night, and then it's back home for that 3-game homestand, which is really where I think it's leaning towards, that's the biggest homestand for the Celtics. Saturday against Washington on the 14th, Phoenix the 16th, and then Golden State on the 18th. Those feel like the games that he would have to come back to also get the reps. They talked about on the broadcast, and we've talked about it. It feels, even though the Celtics might still do it, it doesn't feel very Celtics culture, organization, doing everything the right way, that they would just throw Tatum in with like 5 games left and be like, here's the playoffs. Like,
Right.
you feel like you need at least 10, maybe 12, maybe even 15 games for him to really get a chance to have a warm-up.
How about this, Will? So his birthday is March 3rd.
Mhm.
Jason Tatum has said many times in the past, he's always used the Hornets as like the example of the team he doesn't sit out against. It's like Tuesday night in Charlotte, he's playing, right? This is a home game, but we're playing against the Charlotte Hornets. I think there would be a little bit of poetry to him returning to a game against those Charlotte Hornets, even though they are not the Charlotte Hornets of years past, right? As we've seen this year, they're playing great basketball. But I do think, we were chatting with Alex, our producer in the chat. He says that his contract is $314 million. The St. Louis area code is 314. So there's a game against the Wizards on March 14th. And then, Alex, I actually believed you, and I repeated this information where he said that the first episode of the documentary was 3 minutes and 14 seconds. And I went and double checked today because I was like, that would be some Tatum shit to like drop a little subliminal there. And it was actually 309. And there is no game on March 9th. So alas, misinformation. What do you know?
Yeah, I mean, the Charlotte game was the first one that everybody was like, "That's the game." When Tatum's, "I'm coming back at home. Whenever I do, it's gonna be at home." That was the night everyone kind of circled. I've heard this 314 theory before, or starting to float around as well. It's just so funny because Tatum is so calculated that everyone's like, "There's got to be like a rhyme or reason." And what if he just like springs up at like, that Phoenix game on a Monday night? It's like, yeah, this just gets announced like Monday afternoon, Monday night. There he is on the court. Like, that would be the antithesis of typically what we expect with Tatum. So it'll be funny to see, but we're in the middle of it right now where this is definitively the stretch. Like, I mean, really, Greg, if you look at it, if he's going to come back at home, I think we have 5 home games left that it's either happening or it's not happening. It's Charlotte on the 4th, it's Dallas on the 6th, Wizards on the 14th, Phoenix on the 16th, Golden State on the 18th. Once we get past that, it just starts to feel like there's not enough games that, with as calculated as this organization is, as this culture is, as Tatum and his team are about coming back the right way, that they would just throw him into the mix with so little. Because you think about Tatum in general, when the season starts, he's a slow starter, right? Like, he's been a slow starter. And so you coming back from this injury, you got to get mentally right. I saw our guy Dana Barros today was on Instagram talking about like how he had this ankle injury that like he could have come back from, took him a year. And he's like, I was ready physically, like probably 8 months into it. But for 4 months, I was like, damn, why is everybody moving so fast? Like, it took me mentally like catching up to it. And it just feels like you're setting yourself up for, I don't want to say failure, but you're setting yourself up for the potential of long-term failures that can steamroll if you don't do this comeback properly. And I'd rather just roll with this team than force it if it's not there.
I would say the absolute last possible date would be Celtics Hawks March 27th, because that's the 10-game mark. So there would be 10 games left in the season there. So I'm going to say that's the last possible date if we don't see him by that day. I'm pushing it back, holding out hope, but I do think he needs 15 games. But who knows? Who knows, man?
I'll tell you what, Greg, I don't disagree with you, but I would push it back to the 22nd against the T-Wolves as the last date, only because there's 2 back-to-backs that come after that Hawks game. No chance the Celtics are playing him in a back-to-back, right?
That's
so fair. That would be the only thing that I would say is probably the 22nd would be the drop dead date, which is right after the 3-game homestand that I mentioned. There's 1 road game against Memphis in between, and that's where it seems to kind of be nice to have a cushion to come back, right? Because it's Washington at home, Phoenix at home, Golden State at home. You go to Memphis for 1 game, Then you got 3 more home games: Minnesota, OKC, Atlanta. So you're back for, about 2.5 weeks, and you only play 1 road game. Like, that's kind of a nice way to, reacclimate yourself, is in front of your home crowd for the majority of it. So
Yeah.
I think that's the biggest window that we're looking at, but we'll see. No real major updates, no video drops as far as practice and all that since our last podcast. So not too much to speculate on. Greg, before we wrap up tonight, I just want to kind of look quickly at the NBA standings. As we've talked about before, Celtics backdoored the 40-20 club. So technically it's supposed to be 40 wins before 20 losses if you go back and kind of really look at it. But
yeah,
Celtics still put themselves in position here. They go 40-20. So if you include them, it's them, the Pistons, the Thunder, and the Spurs that officially kind of break that rule. What are you snickering at over there?
it's just not the rule. The rule is it's 40 wins before 20 losses.
I know. That's why I said, like, if they backdoored it. That's what I'm saying. Like, it's not technically, but 40-20. They're in that mix. And then when you look at the kind of top 10 teams in both offensive and defensive rating, it's actually a pretty crowded group right now. OKC, Spurs, Pistons, Knicks, Rockets, T-Wolves, and Celtics all qualify. So a pretty decent list of contenders here. But Greg, I think the basketball is getting really good just all around. Like, I'm enjoying a lot of these playoff intensity matchups, like even outside of Celtics games right now.
Yeah, I was really upset with myself today because James went down for his nap around noon, and that was when the Knicks and Spurs were starting. I ended up watching a little bit of the first quarter, and I was like, I could watch this game or I could take a nap while my kid naps, and I ended up taking the nap. So I woke up, I saw that the Knicks blew out the Spurs, and I kind of caught up on the game from there. But the Knicks continue to be a team that I think is probably the team that comes out of the East, if I'm being completely honest with myself. I think
that was their ceiling today. That's the vision, right?
Did you watch the whole game?
No, I watched most of the first half and then a little bit of the third quarter, and then I had to go out somewhere.
So what'd you see?
So I missed the end of it. So I mean, what I saw was their defense was so much better than I've seen in recent viewings, right? Like, I mean, I just think they're inconsistent, which is crazy, but like, they have the bones of it to be a good defense. Like, when I watched them against the Pistons and like Cade just carved them up, maybe it was just Cade being that exceptional, right? Like, I don't, like, Cade's on a crazy runner. Cade's the only guy I would put above Jaylen Brown in the Eastern Conference this year. Like, Cade's been that good. And I was watching, I'm like, Knicks, like, you guys theoretically have a team that I should look at when it's Knicks Pistons, and it's like over 7 games, you can throw OG, you can throw Hart, you can throw Bridges, you can throw, Alvarado to be a pest, you can throw Sohan in there, DOR is like a long body that's, which I didn't see how many threes he got up today, by the way.
4 for 13, the Grant Williams special.
Yeah, that's wild. But you have all these bodies that I would think like add up to more, and you got Mitchell Robinson on the back. And the Knicks defense has, for the most part, pretty underwhelmed me until today, where I was very impressed with their defense. Even early in the game, they were struggling offensively. The defense was keeping them in, and then their offense kind of took off at a later point. And now, like I said, they're third in offense, they're ninth in defense. Like, that's kind of a really winning formula for New York. And I'm with you. I think at their best, they're still the team I would pick to come out of the East right now before any potential Jason Tatum comes back. And it's hard for me to see anyone besides them if they can perform to that level. But that's the thing. They might not. They just might not show up one night. I don't know. That's the biggest question for the Knicks for me.
Yeah, I just think with Jalen Brunson, I'm such a big believer in what he can do in a fourth quarter. I just think he's absolute nails in crunch time. Cat is the big question mark. I don't think I'm breaking any news there. I've said that a million times in this podcast. It's just like he's so unpredictable. Like, I don't know that he can be your second best player on a championship team, but I don't know that he has to be for the Knicks. I think they have Bridges, they have OG. I think either one of those guys could be the second best player on a championship team. Now I do want to talk about one thing as we look ahead towards the playoffs. Will, the Celtics have, like, I think it's the third hardest strength of schedule remaining in the league. Definitely a top 5. I can't remember exactly where they fall, but here are some of the names that they play. They're just the teams that they play: Milwaukee, Charlotte, Dallas, Cleveland, San Antonio, OKC. You get some easy ones, Washington, but then you're back with Phoenix, which is a tough team. Golden State might have Steph back. Memphis is a easy one. And then you get Minnesota, OKC, Atlanta, who looks good with Kuminga, Charlotte again, Atlanta again, Miami, Milwaukee, Toronto, Charlotte again, New York Knicks, and then you end the season with the Pelicans and the Magic. But having 2 games against the Thunder, 3 games against the Hornets that are playing really good basketball, a game against the Knicks in there, we have some tough games coming up, and I'm really interested to see if Tatum doesn't come back, this team that we've believed in all year, do they really have the bones of a contender, or is it just because they haven't played some of these top teams yet in the league?
Yeah, this is something that did cross my mind as I was kind of doing some prep work here for like the last month and a half that we have left. It's like, man, there's a lot of tough teams on there, you know what I mean? And like the Spurs and OKC are the teams with the second and third best records in the entire league. And we got to play OKC twice, right? Like haven't played them at all. Minnesota, like, you just listed all the games that are coming down the pipeline, and we'll find out a lot. I mean, I do think that the Celtics, two of the things that really help the Celtics that make them maybe a level below the highest level of contenders is, one, they've been healthy all year, right? They've just avoided the injury bug, no major injuries, obviously aside from Tatum being out, and that's helped them to be able to maintain that they have such a high effort level. And that high effort level, when you don't have injuries, like typically then you're able to kind of mask against anyone that may have more talent, but maybe they're on an off night or they're missing a guy, right? And you have all your guys, even if they're not, to the same level. And those things, when you get to the playoffs, generally teams, if they're real contenders, they're healthy and they're typically playing just as hard, right? And they're going to have all their guys. And that usually kind of offsets. And it's like, cool, you're going to be plucky and you're going to, I think in the Celtics case, I would be surprised if they didn't make it to the second round of the playoffs at this point. But, they would be kind of a team where you're like, maybe that's where the joyride ends, and somewhere in that second round. So I'm really interested for this last run of the season here, because I think it's going to be really fun and really interesting to see how we actually stack up against these other playoff teams, man. And I think OKC, because they're constantly in and out with people and they're finally getting some guys back, that's going to be a really fun test. And same with the Spurs, because those two teams, they play just as hard as almost anybody night in and night out, but they have more talent also than most people. So I think those will both be some really good tests for the Celtics here. But yeah, I think it's a fair point to bring up. And, let me ask you this. Celtics right now have a 1.5 game lead on the Knicks for the 2 seed. They're 3 games up on the Cavaliers to guarantee themselves a home court in the first round. How much does home court even matter anymore? Is it just matchups? Like, which,
I think it's
does it
matchups.
Yeah, right?
Yeah.
So that's why I'm like, I don't even know if I care if the Celtics hold on to the 2 seed. If it's like, if it more matters who's the opponent would be in the second round. Is it gonna be the Cavs or the Knicks? Like, which is the better matchup? And that's
I would
probably what will
almost,
determine
like,
how far they
if I
go.
really had to think about it, I would probably want to drop to the 4 seed, so that we avoid the Knicks in the second round, and then we play the Pistons in the second round. That would probably be my preferred path towards Eastern Conference Finals, because I just don't think we match up well with the Knicks.
Yeah, it's good. Yeah, I think the Knicks right now are tough to see us beating in a 7-game series. And that might even be with Tatum coming back, to be honest. Like,
yeah, they have a ton of talent on that team, man.
Yeah, it's just a matter of like those maddening games where it's like, and then maybe a lot of it's just Cat, because Cat's maddening. So maybe that's just the epicenter of will the Knicks will rise and or fall. But yeah, that's gonna do it for this episode here of Green with Envy. This has been a Green with Envy post game live. Celtics get the big win against the Philadelphia 76ers, 114-98. As we mentioned, they're on a back-to-back tomorrow. They're in Milwaukee on a Monday night. Bucks still without Giannis. I don't know if there's been any more recent updates as to if or when he's going to play again. Likely won't be tomorrow night. We'll see who the Celtics have activated for that game. And then rest of the week, home against Concanipple and the Charlotte Hornets on Wednesday night. We'll have something for you guys after that one. And then Friday night against Dallas, maybe Cooper Flag. And then Sunday, another nationally televised game against the Cleveland Cavaliers. So fun week ahead here for the Celtics. Make sure you guys stay locked in with us here at Green with Envy, at Green Envy Pod. Hit us up on all of our socials, Twitter, YouTube, Make sure you guys check out our TikTok. TikTok's popping. Shout out to Alex here for getting that going, keeping the clips coming, keeping them fresh, keeping them hot. We appreciate you. And yeah, Greg, any final thoughts here before we wrap this up and send everybody out?
Shout out to Big Neemy, the Portuguese beast. Let's go, baby. Keep it rolling.
Let's go. We'll see you guys later in the week. Peace.